And I'll share my screen. Okay, Hare Krishna. You can proceed, Divya Gaurangi Mataji.
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances to all the assembled devotees. Thank you for the opportunity to recite. Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 15, Yoga of the Supreme, the Person Purushottama Yoga. Atah Panchadasha Adhyayah. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Text 1. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Urdhvamulam Adah Shakham Ashwatham Prahuravyayam Chandamsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavid.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "It is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas."
Text 2. Adahastotvam prastastasya shakha guna pravardha vishaya pravalaha adascha mulani anusantatani karmanubandhini manushya loke.
The branches of this tree extend downward and upward, nourished by the three modes of material nature. The twigs are the objects of the senses. This tree also has roots going down, and these are bound to the fruitive actions of human society.
Text 3 and 4. Narupamasyeha tathopalabhyate nanto na chade na cha sampratishtha ashvattamenam suviruddhamulam asanga sastrena dridena chetva tatah padam tat parimargitavyam yasmin gatana nivartanti bhuyah तमेव चाद्यं पुरुषं प्रपद्ये यतः प्रवृत्तिः प्रसृता पुराणी.
The real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is. But with determination, one must cut down the strongly rooted tree with the weapon of detachment. Therefore, one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns, and there surrender to that Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom everything began and from whom everything has extended since time immemorial.
Text 5. Nirmana moha jita sangha dosha adhyatma nitya vinibratta kamaha dvandver vimuktaha sukha dukkha sangner gacchami amudaha padamavyayam tat.
Those who are free from false prestige, illusion, and false association, who understand the eternal, who are done with material lust, who are freed from the dualities of happiness and distress, and who, unbewildered, know how to surrender unto the Supreme Person, attain to that eternal kingdom.
Text 6. न तद्भासयते सूर्यो न शशाङ्को न पावकः यद्गत्वा न निवर्तन्ते तद्धाम परमं मम.
That supreme abode of mine is not illumined by the sun or moon, nor by fire or electricity. Those who reach it never return to this material world.
Text 7. ममैवांसो जीवलोके जीवभूतः सनातनः मनः षष्ठानि इन्द्रियाणि प्राकृतिस्थानि कर्षति.
The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind.
Text 8. शरीरं यद् अवाप्नोति यच्चापि युत्र क्रमतेश्वरः गृहीत्वैतानि संयाति वायुर्गन्धानि वा प्रकाशयात्.
The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another as the air carries aromas. Thus, he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another.
Text 9. Shrotram chakshuः sparshanam cha rashanam grahanam eva cha adhisthaya manaschayam vishayanupasevate.
The living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects.
Text 10. उत्क्रामन्तं स्थितं वापि भुञ्जनं वा गुणान्वितं विमूढानानुपश्यन्ति पश्यन्ति ज्ञानचक्षुषः.
Prabhuji, could you please scroll up? Thank you. The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this.
Text 11. यतन्तो योगिनश्चैनं पश्यन्ति आत्मनि अवस्थितं यतन्तोऽपि अकृतात्मानो नैनं पश्यन्ति अचेतसः.
The endeavoring transcendentalists who are situated in self-realization can see all this clearly, but those whose minds are not developed and who are not situated in self-realization cannot see what is taking place, though they may try to.
Text 12. यदादित्यगतं तेजो असखिलं यच्चन्द्राग्नौ तेजोति मामकम्.
The splendor of the sun, which dissipates the darkness of this whole world, comes from me, and the splendor of the moon and the splendor of fire are also from me.
Text 13. गामविश्य च भूतानि धारयामि अहमोजसा पुष्णामि चौषधिः सर्वः सोमो भूत्वा रसात्मकः.
I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon and hereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables.
Text 14. अहं वैश्वानरो भूत्वा प्राणिनां देहमाश्रितः प्राणपानसमायुक्तः पचामि अन्नं चतुर्विधम्.
I am the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities, and I join with the air of life, outgoing and incoming, to digest the four kinds of foodstuff.
Text 15. सर्वस्य चाहं हृदि सन्निविष्टो मत्तः स्मृतिर्ज्ञानमापोहनं च वेदैश्च सर्वैरहमेव वेद्यो वेदान्तकृद्वेदविदेव चाहम्.
I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas.
Text 16. द्वाविमौ पुरुषौ लोके शरश्चाक्षर एव च शरः सर्वाणि भूतानि कुतस्थोऽक्षर उच्यते.
There are two classes of being, the fallible and the infallible. In the material world, every living entity is fallible, and in the spiritual world, every living entity is called infallible.
Text 17. उत्तमः पुरुषस्त्वन्यः परमात्मेति उदारतः यो लोकत्रयमाविश्य बिभर्ति अव्यय ईश्वरः.
Besides these two, there is the greatest living personality, the Supreme Soul, the imperishable Lord Himself, who has entered the three worlds and is maintaining them.
Text 18. यस्माक्षरम् अतीतोऽहम् अक्षरादपि चोत्तमः अतोऽस्मि लोके वेदे च प्रथितः पुरुषोत्तमः.
Because I am transcendental, beyond both the fallible and the infallible, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as that supreme person.
Text 19. Yo mamevam asammudho janati purushottamam sasarva vidbhajati mam sarva bhavena bharata.
Whoever knows me as a supreme personality of Godhead, without doubting, is a knower of everything. He therefore engages himself in full devotional service to me, O son of Bharata.
Text 20. Iti guhyatamam shastram idam uktam maya nagha etat bhutva buddhiman syat krita krityascha bharata.
This is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures, O sinless one, and it is disclosed now by me. Whoever understands this will become wise, and his endeavors will know perfection.
Om Tat Sat iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Upanishadsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Sambhade Purushottama Yoga Nama Panchadasho Adhyayaha. Hare Krishna, thank you.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Divya Gaurangi Mataji and Sanchi Mataji. That's beautiful recitations. As you were reading, I was just thinking how fortunate we are that during this holy month of Purushottam, we are getting this opportunity to bathe our consciousness in the beautiful words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sometimes, we take it for granted that we are doing this, but it is actually a great opportunity. And in many millions of births in our past, that opportunity has evaded us. Now, in this life, somehow that opportunity, by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and the devotees of the Lord, have come to us. So it's indeed, something we should really be very grateful for. So I'll stop sharing and I'll share my slides. So today we will continue with chapter 15, Purushottam Yoga, the Yoga of the Supreme, and we will recite and discuss in more detail the text and purport to verses 3 and 4. Before that, we will say the Mangala Charanam prayers. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpa Turubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhye Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivashadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastajade Shatarine. So text number 4 and 5. Narupam Asheha Tatupalabhyate Nanto Nachadi Nachasam Pratishta Ashvatamenam Suviruddhamulam Asanga Shastrena Dridhena Chitva Tatha Padam Tat Parimar Gitavyam Yasmin Gatana Nirvatanti Bhuyaha Tameva chadyam purusham prapadye yatha praviti prashrita purani. Translation. The real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is. But with determination, one must cut down the strongly rooted tree with the weapon of detachment. Thereafter, one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns, and there surrender to that Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom everything began and from whom everything has extended since time immemorial. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Puja Mataji, would you like to read the purport?
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
It is now clearly stated that the real form of this banyan tree cannot be understood in this material world. Since the root is upwards, the extension of the real tree is at the other end. When entangled with the material expansions of the tree, one cannot see how far the tree extends, nor can one see the beginning of this tree. Yet one has to find out the cause. I am the son of my father. My father is the son of such and such a person, etc. By searching in this way, one comes to Brahma, who is generated by the Garbhodaksha is Vishnu. Finally, in this way, when one reaches the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is the end of the research work. One has to search out that origin of this tree, the Supreme Personality of the Godhead, through the association of persons who are in knowledge of their Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then, by understanding, one becomes gradually detached from this false reflection of reality, and by knowledge, one can cut off the connection and actually become situated in the real tree. Hare Krishna.
Oh, Mataji.
Yeah, the word Asanga is very important in this connection because the attachment for sense enjoyment and loading it over the material nature is very strong. Therefore, one must learn detachment by discussion of spiritual science based on authoritative scriptures, and one must hear from persons who are actually in knowledge. As a result of such discussion, in the association of the devotees, one comes to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then the first thing one must do is to surrender to him. The description of that place, whence having gone one never returns to this false reflected tree, is given here. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the original root from whom everything has emanated. To gain the favor of that personality of Godhead, one has only to surrender. And this is the result of performing devotional service by hearing, chanting, etc. He is the cause of the extension of the material world. This has already been explained by the Lord himself. Aham sarvasya prabhavaha. I am the origin of everything. Therefore, to get out of the entanglement of this strong banyan tree of material life, one must surrender to Krishna. As soon as one surrenders on to Krishna, one becomes detached automatically from this material extension.
Thank you so
Hare
much.
Krishna.
Thank you so much, Puja Mataji.
Thank you so much.
So, we've been discussing, or the Lord has been explaining in the previous verses, verse 1 and 2. The Lord has been explaining how the living entity is trapped in this material world. And the Lord has been explaining that situation in terms of a metaphor. And the metaphor is
Banyan tree.
the banyan tree, yes. How there's a banyan tree sitting on the banks of the river. And that banyan tree is being reflected in the water. And that reflection is a perversion, is a perverted reflection of the real banyan tree. And the Lord explains that perverted reflection is the position of the material world, where the branches are down and the roots are up. And in the previous verse, Krishna has explained the entanglement of the living entity in terms of the deep roots of that banyan tree. A banyan tree is a majestic tree. And just as its branches and that which sits above the ground is majestic, in the same way, its roots are very deep and extensive. So the living entity's position, our position, is considered to be like the roots of that banyan tree. And Krishna in the previous verses explained many aspects of the tree, how the deeper the roots are, then there's different types of living entities and so on. Now in this verse, so in the previous verse, Krishna has described the actual position of the living entity. And that is a position of being trapped, deep-rooted, and suffering. In this verse, Krishna starts, and the subsequent verses, Krishna starts to explain how the living entity can come out of this position, this deep-rooted entrapment in the material world. And there are some common themes in the purport. Srila Prabhupada gives an extensive and a very profound purport. And we'll try to explain some aspects of that purport. And the main themes are that this tree, the real form of the tree, because it is so extensive, it cannot be really understood and perceived. But one has to cut. Just like a tree, many of us are maybe gardeners, and we know at some point in time there may have been something in our yard, either a vegetation that we didn't want, or some tree that we had to take out. And the way we do it first is to chop off. We detach the tree from its roots. And then one tries to prise the tree out from its roots. So in the same way, with the acts of detachment, we have to cut off that connection with the roots. This tree, we've learned, is not real, but it's a reflection of the real tree. And Prabhupada says it's impossible to fully understand the tree, and we'll talk a bit more about that. And we have to cut it down, not only with the axe, but with determination. And then, once we have done that, we've become free. And when you're free, what do you do after that? That is now the positive injunction. Then we have to seek out that desired destination and that desired person. And then we need to go there through the process of surrender. In the purport, Prabhupada makes an important statement. He says one has to find out the cause. Once we've come out of this material entanglement, then we have to find out, where do we come from? Where do we really belong? This was the negative situation, being trapped in this material world. But what is the real situation? That we have to find out. And Prabhupada terms it as we've got to find out the cause. And Prabhupada gives a very simple methodology by which we can find out the cause. He says, just like all of us, we have a father. Every one of us has a father. And our father has a father. And his father has a father. And then if this way we trace all the way back, we trace, we'll come to Brahmaloka. And after we come to Brahma, we'll find out who's Brahma's father. Then we find out it is Garbhodakshai Vishnu. And then we find out, is Garbhodakshai the Vishnu the source? Or does Garbhodakshai Vishnu also have another source? And in this way we go back, we find out that all incarnations come from Krishna, as is explained in the Paribhasa Sutra of the Srimad Bhagavatam. That's the first canto, third chapter, text number 28. Ete chamsa kalopumsa, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. That Krishna, he is the source of all incarnations. Prabhupada says that's the end of our research work. We find out our source. Also, Prabhupada says there's two ways we can do the research. One is we can look at our father's records. And then we go to the registry, we find out his father. Then we look at the registry, we find his father. And this way we try to look. It may take us a long time. The other way is just like if a child wants to find out who his father is, he can go to each man in the street. Are you my father? No. Are you my father? No. Are you my father? No. Then he can go and seek out every man in the world to find out who the father is. That is a tedious and long or drawn out process. He may not be even live long enough to complete that research process. The other way he can do that is he can go to his mother and say, Mother, who is my father? And the mother will say, this man is your father. Then your research work is complete. So in the same way, it is said the mother is the Shruti. It's the Vedic literature. And one can do the research work and one can look at the Vedic literature and say, what does the Vedic literature say in terms of who is our cause, the cause of all causes? Then we will come to Krishna. And the Veda says, Atato Brahma Jignasa. This is the duty, the real duty of human life. Every human being should try to find out. Firstly, understand their position and then try to find out what is the cause. Prabhupada used to say one nice story. There was once a simple farmer. He wanted to serve the greatest personality. He said, I should do this. I should serve the greatest person, and that would be my perfection. So in his search to find out the great person, he first said, my landlord, all of the other farmers go and pay him and give him respect. So he must be the greatest person. I should go and serve him. So he wanted to go and seek out the service of the landlord, and he did so. But one day, he saw some men come on horses. And they saw them coming to the landlord and demand some taxes. And then the servant said, who was those men? They said, oh, that was the servants of the king. They came to collect my taxes. Oh, the king is greater than you? Yes. I think I have to go and serve the king. So in this way, he went to find out how to serve the king. And then he noticed that the king every day was going out into the jungle. And he would go out for some time and he'll come back. So one time this gentleman decided to follow the king. And when he saw the king went, he met a sadhu and he bowed down to the sadhu and he was doing some seva for the sadhu. And then the servant later on asked the king, he said, I thought you, the king, you're the greatest person. That's why I came to serve you. No, that sadhu is greater than me. So he said, can I go serve the sadhu? Okay. So he went and he was serving the sadhu. And then he saw that the sadhu every day was bowing down before a picture of Krishna. And he was offering worship to Krishna. And then he asked the sadhu, he said, I see you bowing down, I see you worshipping. Is there someone greater than you? Yes, there is. Who is that? It's Krishna. Where can I find Krishna? I can find Krishna in the temple. You can find Krishna in the temple. So this very sincere gentleman, he went to the temple. But then the temple was locked. It was late. So he decided to sleep outside the temple door. And the next day, when the servants, the pujaris came, they saw this gentleman sleeping outside the temple. But then they became very alarmed. They saw that this gentleman was covered with the deity, with the chadar of the deity. And then they took their sticks, they started to beat him up, saying, "You are a thief. You stole the chadar of the deity." And this humble man, he didn't protest anything. He bowed down. He said, "I came to serve the deity." And that night in the dream of the pujaris, the deity came and said, "No, what you've done is wrong. That person did not steal the chadar. He's my very sincere devotee. And I put the chadar on him." And in this way, the pujaris were very remorseful, and they took this gentleman and they made him one of the sevakas of the deities. So in this way, one should, with sincerity, with full sincerity, find out who is that supreme cause. And then dedicate our life towards the service of that cause. This is the perfection of life, and this is how we come out from the material entanglement. And we can search out and find the origin of that person through the association of persons in knowledge of who that Supreme Personality of Godhead is. The devotees of the Lord know, and they can tell us. Then it is described that we should cut down this tree, Prabhupada says, through detachment. Now, what is detachment is very interesting. Many people have their own opinions of what is detachment. What is detachment? Srila Rupa Goswami explains that what is real detachment, and I will have some discussion. Most people think, come to the stage that they understand that attachment is bad. It is attachments are like the roots that keep us grounded to the material world. And in our life, all of us, we get so many attachments. Family, friends, and country, and possessions, and this body. And in this way, these attachments they are like the roots that keep us, just like the tree is deep-rooted. The more attachments, the more deep-rooted we are. And these attachments, they stand in the way of our spiritual progress. The Srimad Bhagavatam gives us the example of how even the smallest attachment entraps us. In the 5th canto, from chapter 7 onwards, there is a description of Bharat Maharaj. Bharat Maharaj, very quickly, many of you all may know this pastime, he was the emperor of the entire world. At one stage, the earth was just one big landmass, and Bharat Maharaj was the emperor. He had everything one could wish for. He was the emperor, he had all opulences, he had a beautiful wife, he had lovely children, the perfect material existence. But he was also a very advanced spiritualist. And when it came to a certain point in his life, he understood that he should leave everything to perfect his life. And it is explained, he was so renounced, just like one goes to the bathroom and does one business, and one leaves after that. And there's no attachment to that. what one has left behind. In the same way, he left everything. He became completely detached. He went to the forest, and one day a mother deer was attacked by a lion, and she gave birth to a deer, but at the same time she died, she drowned. So Bharat Maharaj, feeling pity on the deer, took the deer, cared for the deer, and gradually became more and more attached to the deer, till the point of his life, at the point of death, his main attachment, which was his young deer, was foremost in his consciousness, and his next birth, he had to take birth as a deer. So all of these attachments, they keep us in this life grounded, and at the same time, it at the time of death, it also binds us. Prabhupada tells a simple story of how the attachments progress. He tells the story of once there was a yogi who was meditating, but there was a mouse that was coming and disturbing him, nibbling him. And he thought, I can't deal with this disturbance. I better get a cat to take care of the rat. So he got a cat, and the cat was taking care of the rat. But then the cat needed to be taken care of also. He needed to get the cat fed, and he had to feed the cat milk. So he got a cow to feed the cat who was to eat the rat. And then when he got the cow, he was able to feed the cat the milk. But then he thought to himself, oh, now I've got a cow. It takes time to look after the cow. I need to focus on my meditation. Let me get a wife to look after the cow, who will give the milk, to feed the cat, for the cat to look after the rat, to catch the rat. And then when he got the wife, he had to get a house and so on. So in this way, our attachments increase. So therefore, Bhagavad Gita is saying we have to become detached. We have to cut our attachments. Now, it's interesting what people's idea of detachment is. Here is this one Buddhist monk. He goes and asks his master, "Oh master, is it proper for a monk to use email?" And then the master says, "Sure, as long as there are no attachments." And the monks and the other spiritualists, they go through this very tedious, difficult process to become detached. So detachment, in one sense, is their main goal. But interestingly enough, in the bhakti process, this detachment is achieved in a very unique, beautiful, and wonderful way. And interestingly enough, in his book, The Nectar of Devotion, which is the complete science of devotion, Srila Rupa Goswami does not list renunciation, vairagya, in any of the 64 angas of devotional service. And whereas the other transcendentalists, they try to say detachment means becoming free of all material possessions. The devotees take a different view. And Srila Rupa Goswami has given some beautiful verses in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and also quoting from various scriptures about what detachment means in devotional service. And he says, he quotes, "Anasaktasya vishayan yathartham upajundataha nirbandha krishna sambandhe yukta vairagyam uchyate." And Rupa Goswami says, when one is not attached to anything, but at the same time accepts everything in relation to Krishna, one is rightly situated above possessiveness. So what they say is, so just like, say, suppose I have a wallet in my hand. Now, the transcendentalists say this wallet is full of money. It is a deterrent. It is an obstacle on your path. So please give up this wallet and keep your hand empty. But the devotees say no. Firstly, who does the money in the wallet belong to? It must belong to someone. This Lakshmi is Lakshmi Devi, and she's this consort of Vishnu. So Lakshmi should be used in the service of Vishnu. And secondly, if I leave this wallet, the nature of my hand is to want to take some engagement. So why don't I, instead of giving up the wallet, if I automatically take this book on devotional service, then my hand is occupied. So Rupa Goswami says the devotional process is not to reject anything, because everything belongs to Krishna, but to see how everything can be used in the service of Krishna. And Rupa Goswami says those people who want to give up everything in the name of detachment, they are missing a valuable opportunity. What is that valuable opportunity? Rupa Goswami says, one who rejects anything without knowledge of his relationship to Krishna is incomplete in their renunciation. So everything has a relationship with Krishna. The devotee tries to find out what that relationship is and how he can utilize it in that correct relationship. That is what Rupa Goswami says. So the bhakti process is not to give up everything, but to see everything in relationship to Krishna. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the 11th canto, 20th chapter, verse number 8, there is a very, very beautiful and instructive verse. Yad rachaya mat katado jata shadastu yapumam na nirvino nati shakto bhakti yogasya siddhadha. It is said there, if somehow or the other, by good fortune one develops faith in hearing and chanting my glories, such a person, being neither disgusted nor very much attached to material life, should achieve perfection through the path of loving devotion to me. So this verse of Bhagavatam is saying something very important about the process of bhakti. He says the process of bhakti is a balance. Not too much attachment, because by attachment we lose sight of the goal. But then it says something quite extraordinary. It says, but also not too much detachment. Now someone may ask the question, why not too much detachment? I thought detachment is the goal. Rupa Goswami explains the reason why not too much detachment, which is very nice for us. Just the thought of detachment, just giving up, it is not a very palatable situation. Because Rupa Goswami says too much detachment makes the heart hard. Just like the other transcendentalists, the idea of family to them is very abominable. The idea of family means attachment, it means entrapment. But Rupa Goswami or Acharya says, Krishna is a family man. Krishna likes family. And if you are too detached and you hear that Krishna likes family and you hear about Krishna's Leela with his mother and the father, about Vatsalya Ras, you will say, I don't like this. I don't like this Krishna. Therefore, Rupa Goswami says that too much detachment is not good, because a hard heart, Krishna can't sit in a hard heart. Krishna sits in a soft heart. So the Vaishnavas, they never see their families as obstacles. They see their family members, they are also devotees of Krishna. They are serving Krishna. So I should serve them very nicely. I should see that they are given affection. I should see that they are feeling love. And in this way, the Vaishnava achieves a beautiful balance in their spiritual life about becoming detached in the right way. There was just the other day, I read a very simple and beautiful definition of detachment from Tamal Krishna Goswami. He says, when one sees objects without thinking how I can enjoy them, that is called detachment. So other transcendentalists, when they see an object, the materialist, the karmi, when he sees an object, he thinks, how I can enjoy the object. The transcendentalist, when he sees an object, he sees, I should reject this object. But the devotee, when he sees an object, he thinks, this object, it belongs to Krishna. Because Krishna is the supreme proprietor of everyone and everything. So therefore, I should use it in Krishna's service. So in this way, the devotee achieves perfection in their renunciation in a beautiful way. And I'll conclude, this was posted by Bhagavd Mataji this morning in our Sankirtan forum from a lecture of Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada says, Bhakti Yoga means devotional service. If we apply our devotional service onto the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, then the result will be Janayati Asuvairagyam. And this is a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, the first canto. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Jnana Ati Asuvairagyam Janatat Ahaitukam. That as soon as one takes to the devotional service to the Lord, automatically Gyan and Vairagyam, knowledge and detachment, come. Prabhupada says, very soon you'll gain knowledge. You do not know how you have received knowledge. That is magic. That is magic. Because how you'll get knowledge, that is stated in the Bhagavad Gita. And lastly, Prabhupada talks about the word Asanga. Now that we become detached, what is the positive injunction? We have to become attached to Krishna. And the first part of that process is surrender. And if one sees the purpose, Prabhupada mentions in the last paragraph, 4 times Prabhupada says, surrender, surrender, surrender. And in the next verse, the 5th verse, Krishna is going to explain the nature of that surrender, the characteristic of that surrender. So I won't dwell into that bit too much, because that will be discussed in more detail by tomorrow's class by Mukunda Hari Prabhu. And anyway, I think I've gone way over a time today. I'll stop here and I'll take any questions, comments, or reflections that you may have. Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji?
Yes, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Yes. Sorry, it may sound like a bit of a stupid question, but I cannot understand this sentence that it says that this banyan tree is not real, but it is a reflection of the real tree. So if it is not real, how do we cut out the attachment in the roots? Or is it just like a metaphor, isn't it?
It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor. And Srila Baladev Vijayabhushan, he says that word not real, the reflection is just like the reflection in the water. It's not the real tree. It's simply a reflection. Everything in this material world, it's real. Like I'm touching this book, it's real. Everything we are experiencing, it's real, but it's considered to be not real because it's temporary.
Okay.
It's temporary.
Okay.
It doesn't have a permanent existence. Everything that doesn't have a permanent existence, according to Vedic literature, is not real.
Hare Krishna. Yeah.
Okay. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
So, it might be exactly what you've just said, but I might be misunderstanding it. So Kapila Dev says that knowing the absolute and knowing your constitutional position to the absolute is detachment.
Yes.
Does that make?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Is that what Rupa Goswami was explaining as well?
Yeah, Rupa Goswami says it's like everything,
Uh-huh.
yeah, as he was explaining in that verse, if you know its correct position in life,
Yes.
that is the reality. So everything has got its proper position in life. So in the same way, us, when we are engaged in our original spiritual position, that's the reality.
Right.
And it's detachment because we found the positive. There's nothing more to give up.
Yes.
In that position, there's no need for any further detachment because it's the original position.
So that's this verse is totally explained by Kapila Dev, isn't it? He expands on this verse almost, it seems like.
Yeah, from what you've said, yes.
And the mouse and the yogis thing, it reminds me of Mr. Kailash's story that Srila Prabhupada talks about.
Would you like to tell us quickly about that story?
I don't know much about it. I think Narad Muni came to take Kailash. Mr. Kailash said, this is the good time to go back. Come back with me to Vaikuntha or wherever. And Mr. Kailash kept on talking about how it wasn't the right time. He was too busy with his business. Then he said, come back in few years' time. And then Narad Muni comes back again. Then he says, oh, I'm just going to get married now. So I need to look after my wife. And so it's like this asakti, this attachment that you have one after the other and we are all trapped in that. I think we all kind of struggle with those attachments, isn't it?
It is. We struggle, but as we develop in our Krishna consciousness, I think all of us have this experience. We start to see things differently, isn't it? When you try to see things, everything as belonging to Krishna, Krishna is being everything. Everything belongs to Krishna. Krishna is everything. Then what is there to give up? Everything belongs to Krishna. We use everything in Krishna's service. It's a beautiful philosophy, Krishna consciousness. It's really in all of this dry, difficult renunciation. There's no need for that.
Nicely explained, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Any other reflections or comments or questions by anyone?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Obviously, I could not listen to the class today because I just now came. I just logged on. But I wanted to ask a question regarding this banyan tree, the spiritual tree. This is like 2 days ago, I was just trying to read the verse. I could not understand that it says the banyan tree, obviously the reflection is the materialistic needs, right? Materialistic area. The roots start from the Brahma Lok and they go down. And above that is in the spiritual lok, Krishna lok, or Vaikuntha, Goloka Vrindavan. But it says it's the same, the tree is the same as in the reflection. So my question is, so we are living in this reflected tree, which is all of materialistic needs and desires and everything. So how is the spiritual tree same in that way? I could not fathom that. So are they also, maybe in a spiritual way, the attachment is there? I do not know, but I was really struggling to understand that part.
Okay, just like if you look in the mirror, right?
Yes.
The reflection is the same as you, but it's not you. It's of a different nature.
Yes.
So the same way a tree standing on the bank of a river, the shape of the tree, the form of the tree, the constitutional look of the tree is same like the original tree.
Okay.
but it's of a different nature. One is a reflection, and also it's perverted, just like sometimes we look in the mirror, you know, what's on our left-hand side becomes the right-hand side and things like that. It's perverted. So Prabhupada says, whatever you see in the spiritual world is here in the material world. Even Prabhupada goes on to say, even envy is there in the spiritual world. But that envy is of a different nature.
Okay.
It is not contaminated by the three modes of nature. It is not, it's of a completely different nature. So whatever we see in the spiritual world is relationships there. In the material world is relationships. In the spiritual world, it's pure. In the material world, it's perverted. It's on the basis of lust, and the spiritual world is on the basis of true unmotivated love. There are trees, there are cows. They are of a complete spiritual nature, Sachidananda. And in the material world, there are entities in the form of cows and rabbits. Even in the spiritual world, I was reading the other day, they are pets. Radharani has a pet rabbit and a pet monkey, and Krishna has 2 pet dogs. So that is there also. So whatever we see in the material world is there in the spiritual world, well, practically everything, but yeah, it's perverted. Does that explain?
Yes, sir. Yes, I think the reflection, which it changes sides, isn't it?
Yes.
So the right becomes left and the left becomes right. So in that way, maybe it could make some sense, because it's not the same as the original tree.
Yes.
The reflection. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, you said something like envy in spiritual world. What sort of envy we have in spiritual world?
That's a bit difficult one to explain, but Prabhupada says it's of a pure nature. I will try and get the extract out, and I'll post it. But Prabhupada says it is not like in the material world. What does envy mean? Prabhupada says it's the inability to tolerate someone else's progress. But in the spiritual world, it's not like that. That everyone wants to see how someone else is glorified. So it's a bit of a difficult one to explain and understand, but I will, to do justice to your question, I have that quotation somewhere on my phone. I will post it.
Isn't that something like Radharani is asking other gopis to be associating with Krishna, but they are not envied in sense of lust or anything, but they try to prepare the best prasadam for Krishna. Is that way? Does it connect into envy? They don't envy each other.
Yeah, it's a sort of a different type of envy, Mataji, to enhance Krishna's pleasure. Like, you know, in the spiritual world, there's 2 camps. There's the camp of Chandravali and there's the camp of Radharani.
Yes.
And there's always this competition that's going on. And sometimes, you know, Radharani will apparently, you know, show some sort of a mood to Krishna when Chandravali is associating with Chandravali. But the ultimate goal of that so-called envy is to increase the rasa, to increase the pleasure, to enhance the pastimes. So it's of a different nature, but it's an elevated subject. I will try to give all the quotation in Prabhupada's words, so I do justice to it.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. All right, how are we doing for time? If there's is there any other questions, comments, or reflections from anyone? All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for your participation and your nice questions and attentive hearing. We will see you all tomorrow, and tomorrow should be the wonderful Mukunda Hari Prabhu sharing these wonderful realizations in Nectar again. So thank you very much. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Premanande.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.